Hey guys, I have a special guest here for you today. It is Clark Bartram, and I'm just going to read Clark's about on his website, clarkbartramsystems.com. My audience, Clark, they are Steve Reeves fans, they're physical culture fans, they're natural bodybuilding fans, and a lot of them are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and I think you are a perfect guest for them. But for those that may not know who you are, which is probably not possible, let's just go ahead and read through this. Who is Clark Bartram? I've dedicated my entire life to helping people get in the best shape possible, and now that I'm getting older, I realize how many men lose their spark in middle age when they really don't have to. I've been on the cover of over 130 fitness publications, and as a personal trainer, I've helped thousands of men and women transform their bodies and lives. I was recently elevated to the status of ISSA Master Trainer, a title held by only a handful in the industry. More importantly than any business accolade, I am a devoted husband of over 30 years to my wife, Anita, and together we have raised two amazing humans, Taylor and Mitch. Welcome, Clark. How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, my brother. How are you?
I'm doing well. Have you got your workout in today?
Actually, no, I have not yet done my workout. I just did a social media post, though, while you were giving my introduction. I was posting to Instagram because we
Awesome.
live in a world that is hungry for content. And I'm excited by the opportunity to be on your podcast here today because this is just adding to that need for people to get information, be encouraged, and inspired to live life on another level.
Absolutely. And you're right. They are ravenous for information. And so, that leads me into my first question now that we've done an introduction to you is how did you get into fitness? I know I could go Google this and I could read about it, but I know that if you tell your story, it might generate some more questions from me that I wouldn't be able to ask if I just read about it.
Yeah, I think about this and probably a lot like many of your guests who are into the natural bodybuilding scene or bodybuilding in general, Steve Reeve fans who realize that the day they were born is the day they got into it. Because I know for a fact I
Right.
was put on this planet to be in this position that I'm in today, being a pretty fit guy at my age, regardless of age. I don't even like to pin it to that, but understanding that I've been on a path since October 3rd, 1963. But to be more specific, I worked in the gyms after I got out of the Marine Corps. I've been a physical guy my whole life. Speaking of physical culture, I grew up in physical culture. And from the Marine Corps, I needed a job and ended up working at Family Fitness Center as a trainer, kind of learned my way through that, got into management, was in the gym business, started getting around bodybuilders, started getting around guys who saw potential in me and said, Clark, you should compete in bodybuilding. This was 1988 when my buddy Ernie Miller said that to me. He didn't say Clark, he said CB. That's what they called me. And I just jumped into a show, not really knowing anything about it or having any intention of becoming a bodybuilder. And here I am today after doing that one show, competed in a bunch of those. So it was a spiritual reason, like being born, and then also having a predisposition to have a muscular body. And then as far as where I'm at today, that's the business part of it, knowing that there is a need for, let's call it a spokesperson or an avatar for men over the age of 50 who maybe have lost hope and don't realize that they can change their life around today with one decision and get back in shape or in shape for the first time.
Awesome. So, a couple of questions on this. So, when you came out of the Marine Corps and you started working in the fitness industry, was that your specific goal to go work in the fitness industry, or did you just say, I'm going to take this job for the summer and then look around beyond that?
I was getting out of the Marine Corps, so my paycheck was gone from there. I needed to live, I needed a job. I opened up the newspaper. It said Family Fitness Center hiring for trainer or something. So I wandered into this gym, not intending to be a trainer, not intending to get into the gym business or any of that. I didn't know what I was going to do, honestly. My
Hmm.
job in the Marine Corps was a bulk fuel guy, where my credentials would have got me a job at the the airport filling up airplanes. But luckily, I saw that job opening and went in and applied. And the guy said, come back in 2 weeks. I did that probably 4 or 5 times. And finally, on the fourth time, when he blew me off, I needed that job because I was running out of money. And when I was applying for credit, they asked me, where do you work? And I said, you know what? I'm working at this place. This guy keeps telling me to come back. So I said, I work at Family Fitness Center. Danny De La Rosa is my boss. I remember the phone number, 439-4404.
That's
And
awesome.
I walked in. He looked at me. He's like, I like you. I need you in sales.
I need you in sales. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, that was it.
Well, so
That's all.
many parallels here. Well, first of all, do you think that it was divine intervention that you ended up in the fitness industry? Is that something that was just supposed to happen with you?
For sure. If I
Yeah.
look back on my life, there are definitely divine intervention moments that are undeniable as it relates to me ending up in this position.
Yeah.
Specifically, one in particular where I was getting my orders. I got out of boot camp, graduated meritoriously. I stayed home an extra 30 days on recruiter's aid duty. My cousin shipped off to Cherry Point, North Carolina, and I ended up at El Toro here in Southern California. And when I checked in, the guy said, you're not supposed to be here. You're supposed to be at Cherry Point. I said, well, it says right here in my orders, El Toro. He said, we don't go by that. We go by this code, this MCC code. This is 122. Your orders clearly say 123. So if you think about the dynamics of back then, it was typewriters. A clerk typed in a 3 instead of a 2, one digit over, one key over,
Wow.
and it completely altered my entire life. So
Oh
yes,
my
that's
gosh.
divine intervention.
That is incredible. We have some parallels. I know in watching your video that you just did with my good friend Joe Vitale, you mentioned panic attacks. Just to give you a little bit of a parallel situation in my own case, I was at Baylor University in 1985, age 21. I was in a class with probably 100 or so other students, and I was not doing fitness at the time, and I wasn't eating properly, probably partying a little bit at age 21. And to make a long story short, I had a panic attack. It was horrifying in the middle of that class, knowing if I stood up that everybody was going to stare at me. Probably not, but that was just what was in my head. And then if I started to walk down those stairs, stadium type stairs, I might trip, and that made the panic attack worse. So within a week, I was at the grocery store. I grabbed a magazine, Muscle and Fitness. I think it was Rory Liedlmeyer or Bob Paris on the cover. I read it cover to cover. I went and joined Gold's Gym. And then in 1988, I competed in my first contest. I never had another panic attack after that. I attribute that to a healthy lifestyle. And at age 59 now, it was obviously divine intervention. So tell me a little bit about your panic attack that or attacks, plural. I'm not sure which.
So first of all, Rory Liedemeier and Bob Paris and your hero right there, Steve Reeves, probably three of the best physiques to ever walk on a stage. And I would add in Serge Nubret in there as well as another one of those fantastic classic physiques. But my first panic attack was the most notable one that I really realized something horrible was happening in my life was on an airplane. I was coming home from Home Shopping Network where I just was very successful selling a product I had called 3D Abs. And I had no reason, top of line, to have any sort of understanding that what I was going through was a panic attack, because typically you associate that with a very dark time in your life or a lot of stress. And I was making money. Things seemed to be going fine in my life, but underneath there were a lot of underlying issues
Mm-hmm.
that were not being dealt with. And part of that was, in hindsight, looking back, realizing that my kids were getting older, realizing they were growing up, and at some point they were going to be on their own. And even to this day, we still have those fears revolving around our kids. So I'm on the airplane watching Million Dollar Baby, minding my own business and feeling fine. And all of a sudden, my fingers started to tingle. It felt like my tongue was getting giant in my head. My feet were sweating. My heart was beating. And I was convinced that I was either going crazy, I was going to die, or something really bad was going to happen. So I contemplated very seriously getting up and walking and jumping out of the airplane. And if it weren't for the other 135 people on that plane, I probably would have followed through with that. And luckily, I'd had a conversation earlier that week, oddly enough, probably divine intervention, where a guy had described a very similar situation, but he made the mistake, like you had referred to, of standing up and walking down the aisle to go to the bathroom to put water on his face. And he fell over and hit his ribs on one of the armrests.
Hmm.
And it was a very awkward and uncomfortable situation at 35,000 feet. So I
Mm.
strapped in and sat there and thought, okay, if I die, I die. But I realized that it wasn't anything but fear, uncertainty, forethought, stories that I was creating in my mind, either knowingly or unknowingly, that led me to that place. And it was also divine intervention. Again, it was the days of plug the headphone into the arm and
Hmm.
go through the different channels. And somehow I landed on a Christian song. And I never remembered ever hearing any Christian music on an airplane before, but this one had all of the words that I needed to hear in that moment to calm me long enough to get to Atlanta, where I sat on the floor at the train station there amongst thousands of people walking past me on the phone with my wife saying, I don't know if I can get on another plane.
Oh,
I
wow.
might have to take a bus or stay here. And thankfully, she walked me through it, got me on the plane. I got home and I sought wise counsel, counseling, YouTube videos, courses, the Bible, church, people, everything, but I didn't want to medicate myself. So that's when I went down this path of learning the power of our minds.
Mm.
If I could get myself into that situation, I could get myself out of that situation with the same
So true.
process, but flipped over.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, how old were you, Clark, when you had this panic attack?
I have no recollection. I could look at
That's
the
okay.
right date on my book and tell you, but it was probably 15 years ago. My son's 28. Man, it was probably more. It was probably 20 years ago at
So
least.
you were around 40 at that time.
Probably, yeah.
Interesting. And have you had others after that?
Oh, absolutely. I've had other panic attacks. I had one on Home Shopping Network getting walked ready to walk out in front of 80 million people on live
Oh, wow.
television where I had to
Wow.
talk myself into it. I was literally, they were introducing me, tingles from head to toe. And I looked back and there was a door. And I was either going to go run out that door and never be invited back again and just be an embarrassment to myself, or I was going to walk out there and just deal with whatever happened. And I started just talking to myself. And I can't imagine what the line producers up above who were hearing me in my mic were thinking as I started to pray and go, okay, I can do this.
Hmm.
And I had to get myself out there. And here's the lesson in all of this. Once I stepped out, it went away. The minute I got in front of those cameras and I started doing what I do, it went away. And I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I was not giving it more power than it deserved. And in that moment, I pushed through it, and most people don't. They
Right.
stay home, they go get some sort of medication to numb the pain,
Right.
to stop it from happening. And I learned early on, if I can sit up and say, all right, this is what I'm experiencing right now. But panic and fear is a very tricky thing in the sense that even if you think you're equipped to deal with it, it can change its visual to you mentally and represent itself as something different. Like, oh no, no, I know this time for sure I'm having a heart attack.
Fascinating. Yes.
You
You're
know,
right.
I've had the ambulance called here before when I passed out with one, hit my head, curled up in the floor in the bathroom, and I knew for sure that was it for me. And when they walked me out to the ambulance, they said, "Well, it seems like you're just having a panic attack."
Hmm.
I was like, "Wow, okay, this
Well,
is
this is interesting because, in bodybuilding, we think we get up on stage in our underwear, and you've done that, multiple times. I'm assuming you competed more than just the one time, correct?
yes,
And you've been on magazine covers. I know in watching Joe Vitale's video, something that really stood out, you contacted one of the top fitness photographers. Help me with his name.
Ralph DeHaan."
Ralph DeHaan. I thought it was Robert Reef, but you probably worked with him as well. And you told Mr. DeHaan that you were ready anytime, 365 days a year. I'm paraphrasing this part, but your message was, I'm always ready. And I loved that because he did then contact you unbeknownst to you. Was he going to contact you? And he did, and you were ready. And I just love that. It's a fascinating story.
Yeah, that's how I built my entire career. I was at a shoot with Ralph one time. I had already shot a few times, just very small things in Muscle and Fitness and a couple of the other magazines. But it was when I was helping Ralph, I was carrying his bags because I'm always someone who wants to learn and understand from different aspects of any business that I'm involved in. And I heard a bodybuilder from Australia, as the shoot was finishing up, say this. He said, I'll get a hold of you. We'll get in contact the next time I'm in shape. And I was like,
Okay, can we say who that was?
I don't know who it was. I have no
Okay.
idea. I can't
Well, I don't know
remember.
if you know, but I work with Lee Priest, and he's from Australia, and I know Lee doesn't stay in shape all
Yeah,
year long.
yeah,
Lee
it
and
wasn't
I,
me, that's for sure, because he was a big name back then.
okay, all right, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. So when I heard that guy say that, I thought to myself, what if I'm always in shape? Because I saw that there was a need for someone in front of that camera as much as there was a need for someone behind that camera. Because at that time, the magazines were flourishing. There were tons of bodybuilding magazines. And I knew that if I was the guy that was always ready, there would be an opportunity for me to slip in where other guys might need 3 or 4 weeks. And I knew there was an immediacy with the magazines. They didn't have the luxury of waiting 3 or 4 weeks for a guy, or that guy wasn't that important that the magazine would even want to wait 3 or 4 weeks for them, because that was how these guys carried themselves a lot of times. Like, oh, I'm so and so, I won this show, or I have this name. It doesn't work that way. You have to be a commodity that understands that's exactly what you are. And your job is to sell a product, whether the product is the magazine or an article or some sort of device that is being represented in that ad or article in the magazine. And I got that very early
Mm.
because I innately understood marketing. I just have this gift and understanding of marketing and how it works. So I thought, you know what? I'm not going to be a bodybuilder. I like to consider myself like the first real fitness model.
Mm-hmm.
There was bodybuilders who got in shape. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stepped in, and a lot of these guys, speaking of Robert Reef, when I was, before I was ever on a magazine cover, I was shooting for Muscle and Fitness with Sherry Goggin, and I was holding her in my arms, and I spun around to Robert Reef and said, take this picture, it's a cover. And he just laughed and he said, you'll never be on the cover of a magazine. You're not big enough. And you're too big for the other fitness type of magazines, these magazines that were coming out of New York. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to do this. And we have a running joke, Robert Reef and I'll just come up with a number, whatever the number is. I'll say 135. And he's like, I know, Clark, I know. Yeah, 135
Cover
covers.
for the number of covers you've done.
Yeah.
So you're very driven, you're very focused, goal setting. You strike me as intense in a good way. Does this come from the Marine Corps, or were you like this even before?
I believe I was like this before, because if I look at myself in the Marine Corps, the reason I graduated out of boot camp meritoriously, just one of a few guys, was because I had that intensity in me.
Mm-hmm.
Was because I would always be like, this shirt says underestimated, and oddly enough, I'm wearing it today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a tall guy. I'm 5'8", and people would tell me, you're not tall enough. You're not this enough. You're not that enough. And I think that gave me a little fuel to really push harder. So in Marine Corps boot camp, I would just look around and look at the landscape and go, what if I work a little bit harder than that guy? I'm not going to get hit by that drill instructor. What if I rise up in this moment when other guys are cowering down in that moment? I'll stand out and get extra special attention and light duty, so I don't have to go dig a hole. I can drive the CO around when I got out into the Marine Corps. So I learned very quickly that if I showed up clean in my uniform, ironed and neat and boot shined and everything in order the way I was expected to be as a Marine, that I would have the opportunity to get the afternoon off.
Mm-hmm.
Because the guy who stood out was like, okay, Bartram, take the day off. Show these other jerk offs that all you need to do is what you're asked to do. And if you do what you're asked to do, you're going to get something more than these other guys. Everybody else go dig a ditch. And
Mm-hmm.
when I would drive by with the commanding officer in my Jeep and go, meep, meep, they would just flip me off and go, you're a jerk. I'm like, no, I'm smarter than you are. I understand how to manipulate the system in a good way to benefit me. And
Mm-hmm.
that's all I did with the magazines. That's all I
Mm-hmm.
do in the business. When
Mm-hmm.
guys join my program, Maximize Man Elite, I give them elite service. I go above and beyond. It's not an ebook. It's really one-on-one attention. When I get
Mm-hmm.
done with this, I'm calling 5 or 6 of my guys in my program just to say, hey, how you doing? They're gonna die when they hear my voice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they go, oh my God, you're calling me. Yes, I'm calling you.
Well, you got me motivated. I'm ready to get out in the gym behind me there and go do some squats, man.
Let's go.
So recently I interviewed Frank Zane, and I asked him a question about a mantra, and for nervousness, for anxiety, and he said that come up with a mantra, a simple one that works for you, and repeat it throughout the day. That's what Frank does for himself, and obviously it worked pretty well for him. What are your thoughts on that?
There's one in the Bible. For God did not give me a spirit of fear, but one of love, power, and a sound mind. I mean, how much better can you get than that? We were not
Right.
given the spirit of fear at all. This is something that we adopt throughout life by believing things that we hear or voices that are in our head that all of us have. There's not one person on this planet that doesn't hear things. The people who understand that those are passing thoughts, we don't need to grab a hold of them and ruminate on them. That's where the issue becomes. So we didn't get a spirit of fear. We got one of love. Like if we love people, it's easier to love ourselves. We got one of power, right? We can walk in power and authority, but people see that as confidence and arrogance and bad things. I'm confident. I love me some me. And then we have one of a sound mind,
Hmm.
right? So these things are what we need to focus on. Like if we focus on the fear, here's one thing that everyone can take away from this. Stop watching the news.
Yeah.
Stop watching the news. There's nothing on there that is going to benefit you at all. Clark, I need to know the weather. Hey, Siri, is it going to rain today?
Right.
It just
Cool. Well,
answered me. It doesn't look like it just answered me. That's all I need to know.
um, let's shift gears for a minute because I don't want to take too much time without getting at least three questions in here. My fan base for the YouTube channel and Instagram, they are Steve Reeves fans. I know in reading your bio, talked about you being from Escondido, which is right there in Steve Reeves' backyard, Valley Center. Have you met Steve Reeves? If not, what are your thoughts of Steve Reeves? You talked about it a little bit, how he has one of the best physiques. Just anything on Steve Reeves that comes to mind?
Iconic, one of the most handsome bodybuilders and charismatic people to ever be in this industry. And he set a standard for so many people that is living on today, even as we speak. You having a following of men who idolize this guy for all the good reasons. My friend Bob, who's since passed, owned his ranch in Valley Center. He bought it
What?
and lived in it. Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. Were they the owners of it when they had the Steve Reeves Fitness and Film Festival in 2008 and I was a
Yes.
part of that with Joe? They were the
Yes.
owners.
Yeah.
Awesome. I didn't know that.
Yep. Matter of fact, his wife Kelly just reached out to me the other day when I when she saw that I have prostate cancer and just was like, Bob loved you so much. And it reminded me of the fact that, yeah, they bought that ranch and lived in that place and re- didn't restore it, but maintained the integrity of what it was when he had it. Because
Awesome.
Bob was a bodybuilder and a very intense guy, very successful businessman. So he had the finances to go up and get that. I don't know who owns it now. Maybe Kelly still owns it for all I know.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but there's power. There's some magic when I got to walk through that house, and I'm sure you did too. There's something about being around people or their possessions who accomplish so much. Like as an example, Lou Ferrigno held the 1948 Mr. Universe runner-up trophy, and he was so proud, to hold that. It belonged to Steve Reeves, who was one of Lou's heroes. So thank you. I didn't realize that you had that connection. So that's really cool. Okay, well let's address the elephant in the room, and I know recently you have been diagnosed with prostate cancer. I'm not going to apologize because I watched the video with Joe Vitale, and you don't care about anybody's apologies. You just want to address it head on. Tell me about that, please.
Yeah, so it was in this room that I had talked to my urologist, and through a series of different events, starting with a PSA screening with a simple blood test, I learned that I have prostate cancer. And in that moment, I rose up. I didn't cower down because that it goes back to our conversation of fear. What good would I be if I was operating in fear right now instead of power of knowing the ability of my human body to heal myself? So the same thing I said about fear and anxiety and panic attacks, my mind, my thoughts got me into that place. My mind and my thoughts can get me back out of that place. So, not disrespecting any allopathic medicine or Western medicine that we live in our culture, but I am responsible for this. People need to understand that the last 10 years of our life is exactly why we're where we're at today. So, the last 10 years, there was stress in my life that I've identified very clearly, which I've now eliminated from my life. If there's someone in my life who is adding stress, they're no longer a part of my life. People are in my life for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. Very few are lifetime people. Seasons or reasons, pass on. That's okay. It was great knowing you. Just like fear, you can have that same conversation with fear. You served a purpose in my life, but I release you because I no longer need you and I'm no longer benefiting from you. See, I benefited from that fear, like you heard from in that podcast with Dr. Vitale, in the sense that all of that prepared me for that moment when I heard those things and I did this instead of this. There's something huge with posture in the way we address a situation with the energy in our body. You talked about the energy in the room. It's proximity. It's being around those possessions that someone you love and care about have touched and held and earned and loved at one point in their life. So it transfers energy. So my energy being like this is transferring right now to anyone watching this who might be in a similar situation. And I'm saying, look, put your chest out, put your chin up and your shoulders back and walk towards this thing, knowing that you have the ability within yourself, starting with your mindset and going into other aspects, your meals and your movement and the community you have and the integrity in which you live your life. These are my 5 principles that you can affect positive change, possibly without having to do these extreme measures, certainly right out of the gate. You don't need to go get operated on right now. You don't need to take your testosterone to 0 right now. You don't need to go get radiated right now. You have time to shift the things that caused the symptom of cancer and then deal with it accordingly. And you heard me say this, and I'll shut up. Don't let your fear dictate your treatment. If you are someone who's been diagnosed with this or any other form, don't let your fear dictate your treatment. Take a step back, get on the balcony, observe, and go, all right, what caused this? And then deal with it.
Well, we wish you nothing but the best, of course. And what would you like for our male audience to do about their prostates?
Go to clarkbartramsystems.com and order this kit right here. I am a guy who not only takes action, but I take immediate action. Serendipitous in life, things happen, right? And I was in the gym right after getting the diagnosis. A buddy of mine said, hey, I want you to meet my buddy Bart. He runs the largest blood draw facility in San Diego, U.S. Specialty Labs. Bart said, hey, do you want your own kit? Not knowing I had prostate cancer. He said, we're looking for influencers who want to get hormone kits. I said, when can I get it? He said, this afternoon. We marched down to Rancho Bernardo. I got this made, and it is purely for the reason of men ordering it, having it shipped to their house, pricking their finger, dropping 6 drops of blood on a card, letting it dry, putting it back in the envelope, which is self-addressed, postage paid, ship it to the facility. I see these things being done because I'm in there weekly myself getting my blood tested still. And we ship the results back. It's on your phone. It's in a portal. You have it forever because we need data. We need to understand what's going on in our body. And that is what possibly saved my life and saved so many men's lives, because I am out here sharing this information. And because I am who I am, and I have visible abs today, and I'm in shape, And I'm saying, listen, I love me some me. I'm living my life.
I
Let's go. Go get this
love it.
tested.
It couldn't be any easier, guys. And for you ladies that are watching, do it for your husbands or your boyfriends as well. It could not be any easier. I have one last question. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your diet because you're in such awesome shape, age 60. Ready, go. Tell us what your daily diet is.
I'm a Mediterranean kind of guy. I like
Okay.
salads and protein and good fat. If so, I was thinking about this morning, and I came up with an idea for a book about a diet for cancer. I do a Zoom call every Saturday morning with my guys. I had the opportunity, speaking of heroes, one of my heroes was Jack LaLanne.
Oh, yeah.
And Jack and I had the opportunity to hang out,
Hmm.
and Jack would have the most colorful meals ever. He would always have 10 vegetables on his salad. So if we can eat like that,
Hmm.
vegetables and fruits. There's so many people online today. Listen, don't listen to these marketers
No.
who are telling you spinach is bad, tomatoes are bad,
Right.
kale is bad. You're not going to eat enough of those things to affect a negative result in your body. They're going to
Hmm.
say fruit is bad. They're going to say all of these things. That is the most ignorant stuff I've ever heard. These are marketers trying to sell you some BS thing, some BS program. It's to get you to stop the scroll. Blueberries, blackberries, all of these berries are good for prostate health. Cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, things like that help feed your prostate. And oranges, the peel of the orange with the pectin in there.
Hmm.
Your body unfortunately can't assimilate that, so there's products like Pectisol is one of them that has modified citrus pectin. Like what I'm getting at is if it's coming from the earth, it's really good for you.
Hmm. So, how many carbs a day would you say you're eating?
I'm a low carb, a complex carb. I don't eat a lot of potatoes. I don't eat a lot of rice and things like that. I don't necessarily avoid it,
Hmm.
but I don't ask for it. So if I was going to a restaurant today, I would ask for a salad and some sort of protein. Ideally, salmon is what I like because the fat sources in the salmon that we
Hmm.
need for brain health and those sorts of things. So that would be my go-to meal, a salmon, a really beautiful salmon salad with a bunch of vegetables on it and maybe a balsamic vinaigrette dressing.
Hmm. How about a cheat day? Are you doing a cheat day once a week or once a
I don't
month?
have a designated time. Like, I don't like to focus on that as much as I
Hmm.
like to focus on, hey, I feel like eating that. I'm going to eat it, but I'm not going to attach any guilt to it. I
Hmm.
think too many people, one, focus on a quote unquote cheat day. I like to change that and reframe that wording, just like I am with cancer,
Hmm.
to something different. My buddy Michael Hearn calls it a high day, meaning higher calories.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
call it a free day where you can eat freely whatever you want. But typically, cheating is associated with bad things. And I don't like framing my words around things like that because now we attach guilt to it. Oh, you had a pizza or cheesecake or both. And then
Hmm.
you're like, oh, man, I just ruined all week. No, you didn't. You just
Yeah,
enjoyed something. So,
right.
enjoyment day, whatever you want to call it, but don't let
Absolutely.
those extend out too far.
And Clark and Mike O'Hearn have great videos on YouTube for you guys, girls watching. They get really into some great conversations about mindset and, of course, fitness and working out. So I just wanted to mention that. Had you heard that there's a movie on Jack LaLanne in the works?
Yeah, with Mark Wahlberg. I actually was at the production facility not too long ago, and they were asking me questions about my relationship with Jack. And I
Hmm.
told them some really great stories, and they were laughing. And they said we had never heard anything like this before about Jack,
Hmm.
because I did have the privilege of traveling with him,
Oh,
eating lunch
wow.
with him, drinking wine with Jack LaLanne,
Yeah.
being at trade shows. He was on my television show. Matter of fact, one of the first day he came onto the show, he walked onto the set. In the wardrobe department was his famous blue jumpsuit.
Hmm.
Someone, and I'm not the tallest guy, like I had said earlier, but Jack was shorter than me. You can see it on YouTube if you type in Clark Bartram, Jack LaLanne.
Okay.
But someone handed his jumpsuit to me and said, "Put this on." I said, "Absolutely not. That's like stepping on the Bible or ripping Superman's cape." I said,
Hmm.
"Put that thing away. Don't touch it. Don't talk bad about it. Don't look at it the wrong way."
Don't even look
That's
at
Jack
it.
LaLanne's jumpsuit right there, man.
That's hilarious. I can't wait for that movie, and I'm waiting for the day when you have your own biography because you have a fascinating story to tell. Anything else you want to mention, Clark, before we wrap up?
I just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity to come on your platform, because I'd be remiss if I didn't really truly let you understand how much I appreciate me getting this message out on platforms that people have curated and worked so hard to bring in. Your demographic is perfect for me. So, for everybody listening right now, I just want to say, look, take what I said seriously about getting your PSA checked. Understand that your health is in your hands. And I thought about a post, and I'll end with this. Ask yourself, is my lifestyle rewarding me or killing me? And it's just doing one or the other. So
Right.
if it's not rewarding you, it's killing you. So you have to ask yourself, what am I doing that's killing me? What is adding fat on my body? What are the things that I'm eating? And I'll finish with my 5 principles. What in my mindset is wrong? What in my meals, my movement, my community, or my integrity am I not doing at the right pace and the right level? If you think on a scale of 1 to 10, you should be at a 7 or above in those 5 principles. And I
Love it.
promise you, if you operate that way, your body's going to reward you, not kill you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, let's leave them with one of these. There you go. There's a couple of old guys giving you a what's up bicep pump. Thank you so much, Clark. I appreciate it. You have a wonderful day, and have we'll see you in the near future. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you, my brother. Get back to
Thank you,
that fast.
man. Take care.
See ya.